Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole, the 4th District in Oklahoma. This is another one of our weekly congressional chats. In the House, really, it has not been a very busy week at all. We've had almost no major legislation to consider. The real action in Congress has actually been in the United States Senate. And there it's been a very consequential week. The president, of course, over the holidays, suffered a major defeat when Senator Manchin said he would not support the so-called Build Back Better bill in its current form. He's continued to hold to that position, and that was most of the president's major domestic agenda down the drain, quite frankly, because there's no Republican support for it at all. The president and his administration then switched to what they call voting rights, but really is better considered voting rules. Everybody in America that's of the appropriate age and is an American citizen has the right to vote. But historically, states have decided what the rules of voting are. That is, they've made most of the decisions about elections, and that's actually a matter in the Constitution. Democrats have pushed a major election overhaul that, quite frankly, would federalize the election system in the country, and have tried to push that through. Again, it has uniform Republican opposition, but it has uniform Democratic support. The problem is in the United States Senate, not enough to get to 50 votes and then use your vice president to break the tie. You've got to get to 60 votes to actually close down debate. The president tried to do that, and the Democrats did. They failed. They got their 50 votes. All 50 Republicans voted no. Then they tried to change the rule, the so-called filibuster rule, to make an exception where voting issues or voting rules are concerned. Again, nobody's questioning the right to vote, and if anybody did anything at the state level, you could appeal that, take them to court, and you'd almost certainly win if there's a violation. But in changing the rules, the president and the majority in the Senate ran into a problem. Two of their own members, again, Senator Manchin from West Virginia and Senator Sinema from Arizona, decided they did not want to change the rules, that they thought doing that would actually make the Senate too much like the House, which is a majoritarian institution, and would make cooperation between the two parties and bipartisanship less likely to occur. Both sides would just simply, when they had the majority, ram through whatever they wanted to without much consideration of the viewpoint of the other side. Right now, structurally, whether Republicans or Democrats are in the majority in the United States Senate, to get anything passed, they have to work together. They have to get to that magic 60 votes. So at least some part of the opposition party has to consent, unless there's just overwhelming dominance by one party or the other. That doesn't happen very often in the United States Senate. So again, it was a pretty tough week for the president. They couldn't resurrect Build Back Better. They couldn't pass their voting rules or rights legislation, and they couldn't alter the filibuster to allow them to achieve that objective where voting issues are concerned. So catastrophic defeat for the president. But this week was also consequential in the sense that it marks 1 year of the Biden presidency. And President Biden on Wednesday of this week actually gave a 2-hour press conference, more or less defending the case that the administration had been successful, and said the American people simply don't understand how successful we've been, and that's why we have bad poll numbers right now, and the Republicans haven't cooperated with us. I think there's a better view, and that's this has been an extraordinarily disappointing year, I think, for the American people and certainly for the administration. And I think if you think back over the year, it's easy to understand why. Let's start with COVID, where the president walked into a promising situation. Vaccines had been developed. They were being deployed. We were vaccinating over 1 million Americans a day when he took office, which actually was his initial goal. They were able to expand that. That is excellent. And that offered a measure of protection that the American people had not had. Nevertheless, however you want to look at COVID, the issue hasn't been taken care of completely by a long shot. We actually have more COVID cases today than we had when the president took office, because there's been 2 new variants, the Delta variant and Omicron, that have come along, and particularly the latter has been extraordinarily infectious. And we've lost actually in this last year more people during the Biden administration, than we lost during the Trump administration. Finally, and much more troubling in some ways, is the fact that despite spending literally hundreds of billions of dollars, the administration was caught unprepared in terms of having rapid testing available to the American people. We have the technology. The government simply didn't procure the tests, and we're running behind on giving the American people the ability to test themselves and see if they're sick. And second, the same thing's true of therapeutics. Promising therapeutics have been developed in the last 18 months. Many of them during the Trump years simply weren't produced in sufficient quantity. So quite often, particularly as hospitals fill up, people aren't getting the treatment that doctors want them to have. We simply didn't make enough of the medicine. Again, the resources were there, but the administration bungled the job. So in the COVID situation, I think things are challenging. Again, some things are better. It's good, and I want to reemphasize, I support the vaccine effort. If you've not been vaccinated, I hope you will get vaccinated. But the testing effort and the therapeutics effort for people that do get ill simply have not met the standards that we would have expected. And certainly, coronavirus is not in the rearview mirror, as the president suggested it would be when he declared independence from the virus in July. So that's failure one. Failure two, of course, is the economy. When I'm at home in Oklahoma or in Washington, D.C., inflation is probably the number one thing that I hear discussed. Families understand that everything they pay for that they need, food, shelter, transportation, all of that's more expensive than it was. Inflation's now running at the fastest pace it has in literally 40 years, since the early 1980s. As a matter of fact, many Americans, if you're under 40, you've literally never experienced this kind of rapid price increases. The president likes to point out wages are going up. That's true, but if you adjust wage increase and inflation, you're losing ground, not gaining ground. And if your paycheck isn't up at least 7%, believe me, you're able to purchase less this year than last year. That's not a good thing. And the cause of that is the excessive spending that the administration engaged in over objections by Republicans and even some Democratic economists like Larry Summers, the former Clinton Treasury Secretary, very famous economist, warned that spending the kind of money Democrats spent early in the Biden presidency would lead to inflation. Well, it has. It's here. And despite assurance from the Federal Reserve it would be transitory, it's stubborn and persistent. Another problem, of course, that the president, I think, has to take complete responsibility for is the southern border. I mean, we have people and drugs pouring over that border at an unprecedented numbers. And this is directly attributable to the president undoing the policies that were in place during the Trump administration and basically putting out the welcome sign. Nobody's being deported. The wall was never finished. We've devoted no new resources to the border. And we've made people coming in illegally know that, hey, we'll release you if you get into the country. We'll wait for you to show up at court. That doesn't happen very often. And you're not likely to be sent back home. That's an extraordinary failure, and the president's proposed nothing to reverse that. He made the Vice President Harris, as the czar of the border, so to speak, but not really giving her any power. And to be frank, she hasn't done anything that's constructive. So again, that's a great crisis. The import of, we have more than twice the amount of fentanyl coming in the country we had a year ago. And we have literally, by exponential factor of increase, more people coming in illegally than we had. And again, no proposal by the president to fix it. Finally, of course, we've seen some of the great challenges overseas. And I think they stem directly from the president's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan in such a haphazard, incomplete way. That turning over of a country of 38 million people back to the Taliban is something that was an enormous mistake. It may have been fleetingly popular, but many people warned it would send the wrong message around the world. We gave back a country of 38 million people to the same folks that hosted Osama bin Laden. And in the process, 13 Americans died during the withdrawal. Hundreds were left behind. Certainly thousands of Afghans who cooperated and worked with were also left behind. We were able to get, several tens of thousands out. That's a good thing. But just to say the operation was a success when anybody watching their television set could see it was an abysmal failure, I think is one of the things that began undermining the confidence of the American people in the leadership of the president. I think our adversaries are quick to note things like that. So as I speak to you, we have over 100,000 Russian soldiers massed along the Ukrainian border. Ukraine's not directly an ally of the United States, but invading countries and democratic countries and changing their government because you don't like them, and demanding the United States roll back NATO. Those types of things are unbelievable. But that's exactly what the Russians are doing. So far, I would say our resistance to that has been less than impressive. And you also see the Chinese being more aggressive in the South China Sea, in the East China Sea, in the skies, in the defense zones around Taiwan, with the Uyghurs, a Muslim group in far western China who've been subject to genocide, with Chinese ignoring their treaty obligations in Hong Kong and crushing the democratic movement there. Again, there's been no resolute American response. And so I think by most of the measures that you look at, and that includes polls, things look pretty bad right now. Only 28% of the American people think things are going in the right direction, according to one recent survey. 64% believe it's going in the wrong direction. Only 28% say that they hope the president runs again. 70% say they hope he doesn't. Again, that would change in a real campaign. But the reality is the American people have had a year of this administration and are not very happy about it. This is not unique to Oklahoma. These are national figures that I just quoted, and they show a broad disappointment in this administration. Having said all that, of course, we're going to keep working the things, and we're heavily involved in negotiations over the appropriations bills. Those are critical to our state, everything from funding the military at places like Fort Sill and Tinker Air Force Base, McAllister Ammunition Depot, Enid and Altus Air Force Bases. Those things are very important, and they're critical programs. So we're focused on that. We hope there will be some areas we can cooperate with the president and with our Democratic colleagues. They've been few and far between this year. But I think in summary, it would be hard not to be disappointed whether you supported President Biden or did not during the last election campaign. Most Americans have come to the conclusion this has not been a successful opening year. And we'll see what the president does to change that. Right now, I think his tendency is just to simply blame the Republicans, although, again, most of his major initiatives were scuttled because not every Democrat would go along. And the Republicans were never included in a negotiation. The great exception to that, of course, is the infrastructure package. And when the president sits down and works with you, I didn't vote for it. Nobody in our delegation voted for it. But there will be Republicans that come to the table and work with him. And indeed, there are a number of areas I would like to work with the president on. But so far, been very little outreach from the White House to the minority side of the aisle, even though they need Republican votes in the Senate. And even though to pass appropriations bills in the House, they will also need Republican votes. So we'll keep tracking it for you. We hope things get better next week. In the meantime, stay safe and try and look after yourself and your family. And if we can ever be of any help in any way, never hesitate to contact me or my office.